All right. We got a good episode today. It's the first trainer I've had. We've got the director of strength and conditioning for football at the University of Arizona. Excuse me. Brian Johnson is here. He is formerly the assistant for the 49ers strength coaches, LSU, Texas A&M, and now he's the director for University of Arizona. Brian, what's going on, man?
Not much. How you doing?
Good. So, like I said before, you were, the assistant for other college programs and even for a NFL team, and we'll get to that in a little bit. But what I want to know is, I want to know your transition from just being a assistant at other programs to now you're kind of overseeing everything at Arizona.
Uh, yeah. I mean, just like everything, your experiences, kind of mold and groom you to be something better if that's what you're working towards. And when I got into this business, I knew that I always wanted to be a head strength coach. So it's just all about putting myself in position to do that, and not only just get that job, but to be the best at it. So all of those stops, working for mentors, and some of the people that are considered some of the best in the business, was very integral and kind of molded me to be what I am today.
Right, and like, who was one of those mentors, if you have somebody in mind?
So Tommy Moffitt at LSU, who was my college strength and conditioning coach. Um, Being a player up under him was a lot different than coaching,
Right.
because as a player, there were a lot of things that he did that I didn't understand. But then having an opportunity to coach and work under him as a coach gave me that outlook into exactly what we were doing, but also why we were doing it.
Right.
And then after that, going to the 49ers, Mark Uyama, who's now the director of human performance at the Minnesota Vikings, also became a mentor from a strength and conditioning standpoint, just because he had a vast knowledge. And I won't say that his knowledge set was more than Coach Moffitt's. They just looked at things in different ways. And that was kind of my intro into, one of the beauty, strength and conditioning is like an art, right? Everybody kind of looks at something and then they come up with their own translation and they're able to kind of put it on canvas.
Yeah.
And that's when I was able to see that when I went to San Francisco and worked for another strength coach, that we're all doing the same thing. It's just about how you interpret what you're seeing or whatever you're interpreting, and then how you're putting it on canvas. And it doesn't make it any more better than anybody else's. But it's your translation and how you organize it and how you do it. So me leaving Coach Moffitt and going to the 49ers and seeing that in Coach Uyama became my outlook into that aspect of it.
Okay.
So those are probably my two biggest mentors. And I have a lot of, I have mentors that have nothing to do with strength and conditioning who are football coaches. I have mentors that aren't even football coaches or anything in sports. So I like to draw things from all of those people.
Gotcha. And so far, like, what's been like the biggest difference? Is it more like workload, since you're, kind of the guy, like you're the head guy now at Arizona, or is it something else that goes along with that title?
Yeah, one thing I say is that now that I'm a director, I would be the best assistant ever in the world if I had to go back and be in an assistant role, because
Right.
now I truly understand what a director has to deal with. It's not just about writing programs and coaching the players. You got to deal with head coach, assistant coaches. You got to deal with a couple of administrators. You might have an administrator that also understands sports performance, but then you might have some administrators that don't really know everything that it entails and that it takes. And you have to be able to communicate with them. You got to be able to communicate with a nutritionist. You got to be able to communicate with a sports scientist, and you got to be able to communicate with the athletic training staff. So there are a lot of different people that you have to communicate with that all communicate differently. just not even from because they're a different individual, but because of their expertise, uh, and some of the language and things that they use, and also that their canvas is completely different from yours and other people that you've been around, right? So you got to be able to communicate with all of these people and help them understand exactly what you're doing and what you're trying to do, and why. You know what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
as an assistant, you never had to do that. You just you might print out something for your head strength coach. You also obviously assist and help with the groups, but it's a lot of more repeating what that head strength coach is saying if you're a good assistant. But now as a head guy, I have to create the language,
Right.
and a lot of people don't understand that, and they underestimate how difficult that is. Is I have to create a language, and I have to get everyone to buy in and understand that language, and then I have to change it depending on who I'm talking to.
Definitely. So kind of that kind of loosely kind of goes into the next question I want to ask is when you do have to, or when you switch programs, either whether it's LSU, Texas A&M, 49ers, what's that like kind of acclimating to the new school and like the kids? Because I'm sure you don't have like some cookie cutter program. You got to like make different workouts for certain individuals, certain teams. So what was that like kind of going around the different schools and other programs?
Well, first and foremost, I mean, you just have to look at resources. My first job was at Florida State, where there were unlimited resources, and I was dealing with the top 0.0001% of athlete, right? I mean, I was working with the most
Right.
elite in the world, and that's proven, because if I go back and I look at the roster for Florida State, the amount of guys that played in the NFL, got drafted, played in the NFL, and are still playing, winning Super Bowls, it's ridiculous, right? Um, and then my first head job 2 years after I started at Florida State was University of Akron. Great,
Okay.
great school, great school. I was actually surprised at the facilities, but they weren't anywhere. The facilities weren't anywhere near what Florida State was.
Of course. Yeah.
And I mean, there were guys that I coached at Akron that are playing in the NFL. Great athletes, great people, great human beings. But whereas at Florida State, I had a locker room full of them. At Akron, I might have had like 4 or 5. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Plus the resources weren't as great. At Florida State, we had I want to say almost 20 racks. At Akron, I want to say platforms, we might have had 8 to 10. And then on the other side of the weight room were the squat and bench racks. And we shared it, you had to share that room with everybody. So you had limited time where you could get those sports in there.
Yeah.
So learning how to work with limited resources, and being creative of how you space out the weight room and who goes what when you have a group of 30, 40 people, kind of helps you formulate a recipe for wherever you have to go. And then, yes, even being here at the University of Arizona, it's a Division I, it's a Power 5 school. Um, I think more people here love basketball than they love football. There is a great fan base here for football, but I'm used to, at Florida State and LSU, football being king. You know
Yeah.
what I mean?
Yep.
Where no one's talking about anything but
Yep.
Florida
But
State
football.
football,
Absolutely.
LSU football. You know what I'm saying? And other sports do get a lot of love, but you know who's king. And then here, I mean, traditionally, Arizona, I mean, how many people do they have in the NBA? And, they have championships here and Final Four appearances. I mean, it's a great tradition. So, also being at a place where kind of basketball reigns king and that is the main sport. We have really good resources here, but we don't have it once again, as many guys that are drafted first round draft picks here at Arizona that I had at LSU or Florida State. So it's just all about understanding what you have. I can't train these guys like I would train Florida State. I mean, we got, there are freshmen at LSU and Florida State that you saw them walk through the door and you're like, they're first round draft picks.
Yeah. Automatic.
Here, there's more of a developmental aspect. It's not just about pushing them to the limit, and and then just throwing them out there on the field. You really have to become individualized. You really have to look at what you have. What is the need? what you're getting in, and development has to be a key. Now, yes, development for me would be the same if I had guys at the LSU type caliber guys, but you know, whereas LSU might be the 0.00001%, here at Arizona we're probably like 0.000%. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
0.1%. I mean,
I gotcha.
they're still very elite, but you know, you don't have a three deep. You know what I'm saying? Like, you have to develop that freshman to become a draft pick, a
Absolutely.
first rounder. You know what I'm saying? Like Jamal Adams, you knew he was a first round draft pick day one at LSU, right? And I got some guys here at Arizona that could be first round draft picks, that could be, but it's gonna all be about, you know, what I'm doing in the weight room, what their position coach is doing, and you know how serious they take it. So there's a lot when you step into a building like that. You know, first rounders are everywhere. You know what I'm saying? And in
Yeah.
Arizona, you got a great. I mean, we got Teddy Bruschi, we got Lance Briggs, uh, we got Gronkowski, Nick Foles. You had those type of people. You know, Ricky Hunley. You had those guys up on the rafters and then, you know, in the stands.
Yeah.
Chuck Cecil. You had those people. But it's, you know, even those guys are, you know, a little ways back. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
it's a different approach from a developmental aspect and even a motivational aspect. Like, hey, why don't you guys be the first ones to kind of bring that caliber back to school? So there are a lot of different things when, you know, that are entailed when you're going from place to place, and you know, being at a bunch of different places and seeing a lot of different things kind of help form my philosophy, I guess, if you want to call it that.
Yeah.
It's and how I train and how I develop my athletes.
Okay. Yeah, and you know, it might even come down to like just like a mindset. You know what I mean? Like of the players that
Yeah,
they gotta, start to establish. Like you
for
said, they
sure.
kind of bring like the tradition back to like Arizona football instead of basketball. But
Right, right,
um, so maybe you can kind of take something that you learned from the NFL and sort of like implement to a college kid. Because what I want to ask you is, what is like the biggest differentiator from these guys in the NFL that like that separates them from a kid that's going to stop playing after college, and
right, right,
like maybe taking something from them that you could bring over to Arizona. So, what are some of those things?
right. So the biggest thing in colleges is now it's like a real business, which we're about to see in college now because you have the likeness stuff coming up, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Everything in the NFL is about branding, but it's also about, you know, those guys are very particular about what they're doing and how they're doing it. You know what I mean? So I think that's where a lot of my individualization of training came from what I saw in the NFL. Is I can't train the rookie like I train the 15-year vet.
Yeah.
You know, I can't train you know, Anquan Bolden or Joe Staley like I train, you know, young Gunner. You know, and plus, if you haven't been with some of those people from the beginning, they have a routine. They have certain lifts and things that they like to do in the off season.
Yeah.
They have things that they like to do in the in season. You know what I mean? So it's all about that personalization, because the last thing you want is a guy that's been in the league for 10, 15 years. That's a guy going to a GM saying this dude doesn't know what he's doing.
Yeah. Absolutely. And
He's
also, you got to like earn their trust in a sense. You know what I mean? Because like if they've been there for a while and they might have had one guy that's in their corner, and like you got to kind of step
they
in
know
there for them to trust
they
you.
know what's good. Yeah, they know what's good and they know what's crap, right? So even though what you're doing might be great, you might be able to prove it scientifically, and it might be some of the best stuff anybody's seen. If that player doesn't believe in it, then it sucks.
Yeah.
So you have to be a good listener. You have to be a good watcher. You have to be a great communicator. Because let's say that player is doing something that could hinder them from being the best that they could be, you have to be able to convince them that, hey, what you've been doing for the last 9, 10 years could be better. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then you better make sure they see the results of that. So that's really what I brought to college. I mean, it shouldn't be any different. You know, I got more people in college, So I can't be as individualized as I could be maybe in an NFL room, or if I was a basketball strength coach where I only had 15 people.
Yeah.
You know, that writing 15 different programs is nothing. All right. It's trying to write 15 different programs for 120 guys. That's the hard part.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? There's only 5 of us. Uh, and not writing them is the hard part, but actually implementing them and watching them, make sure that they're going the way they're supposed to be going is the hard part. So, you take what you can from the NFL. Those guys are making a lot of money, so it's just a lot more at stake.
Yep.
A guy gets injured and he goes down, like there's a calculator that starts. You know what I'm saying?
Oh
And
yeah.
that
Yeah.
calculator is measuring how much money the organization is losing because that player is out. And if you have anything to do with that, which we all know as strength coaches, we're going to be the first stop when it comes to that stuff. They're putting that on your tab. So you can't run that tab up. So in a lot of times you can't even really train like you want to, just because you want to make sure that nobody's walking out of your weight room going to the training room. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying?
Yeah.
But it makes you more careful. It makes you a little more strategic. If it makes you read, you know, 10 more chapters or just 10 more pages, or do a little more due diligence, then you're becoming a better strength coach, and you're probably doing what's better for the athlete anyway. Uh, so you just kind of take that same approach and you bring it to college. Yes, there's a more, probably more of a developmental aspect in the college guys because they're younger, and once you get a certain amount of NFL guys, they're not developing as fast, or there's less adaptation, probably just because of the simple fact that they are in their peaking. Most of them are in their peaking years. Uh, but when you get to college, you still have to it's got to be detailed, and your main uh, objective better be development, period. And that looks different for everybody.
Absolutely. Yeah. So last question I got is, in your experience with college guys now, what is the biggest struggle that they'll have in the weight room coming from a senior in high school and being a freshman in college? What's like the biggest adjustment they have to make in order to improve their game?
Well, they got the biggest is that you have to get out of that. I can power clean 315 pounds. I can back squat 500 pounds, and I can bench press 365 pounds. Because none of those numbers mean that you're going to be a good football player.
Right.
You have to be willing to take a couple steps back. Well, yeah, you bench press 365 pounds because that's the only pressing, or that's the only thing you've ever done, right? When I
Yeah.
start throwing in a bunch of back exercises or posterior chain exercises and it's tearing you up, that means there are a lot of things physically that you just don't have,
Yeah.
right? Your shoulders are rolled forward. Yeah, so yeah, you can bench a bunch of weight. But then when I start working on other things, that bench press might get a little weaker just because I'm demanding more from the body that supports that. So, you might be able to power clean 315 pounds, but it looks terrible. And you're going to have some back issues, shoulder issues, elbow issues if you don't fix some of that technique. So, they from high school guys, you just got to you have to get them to understand, like, we got to do a movement assessment. And some of your workouts will probably just consist of a kettlebell and some dumbbell. You might not even see a barbell for like 3 months. You
Yeah.
know what I'm saying? So getting them out of that. I mean, let's take you out to the field. If you can do some body weight squats, some reverse lunges, some push-ups as active recovery, and you know what I'm saying, in between some tempo runs, then okay, yeah, maybe you are ready. But if you can't do a reverse lunge or just a simple plyo push-up to push yourself off the ground, but you're telling me you can bench press 400 pounds, come on, man.
Yeah.
You that your strength is not transferable to the field, right?
Yep.
So that's the biggest thing, is trying to get them to understand, like, we have to build you so that what we're doing, the numbers that you're putting up translate into the production that you're getting on the field, and we can keep you healthy as offensive lineman. Yeah, it's cool that you can bench press 400 pounds, but you'll never have to bench press 400 pounds in the game. Can you push yourself off the ground into a plyo push-up? Okay, now that tells me you might be able to punch somebody off of you in a pass set when you pass blocking. right?
Right. Yeah.
We got to work on some isometric yielding and overcoming because that's what's going to tell me that you can pancake somebody on 4th and goal. You know what I'm saying? When we need that to happen. That 400-pound bench press, that's not doing any of that.
Right.
So that's the biggest thing is getting those high school guys to understand that there's a lot more develop. And I mean, I've seen it even out of the best athletes I've ever coached. They come in and there's still a lot that they need.
Yep. Absolutely. Yeah. I think that's a good point. I kind of thought you were going to say something like technique with their training, and I'm sure some guys do have that issue. But I like what you
Yeah,
said
for
there,
sure.
kind of, you know, being able to translate what you do in the weight room onto the field, not just putting up numbers in the weight room. So I
Yeah, I
think,
mean, even before I had to start teaching technique, right? I mean, if I haven't evaluated how you move, right, with just body weight, technique doesn't even matter. You know what I'm
mhm,
saying? Like we can preach technique all day, but if I haven't if I haven't evaluated and tried to fix the first issue, and that's any deficiency in movement, it
yeah,
doesn't matter. Even with decent technique, if there's something going wrong in that ankle or that knee or that hip, we're still adding volume onto uh, dysfunction. You know what I'm saying?
yep,
So that is my first thing is movement, and then we can get to the technique.
absolutely. So that's all I got. Thank
All
you
right.
so much for taking your time.
Nah, no
Uh,
problem.
Much appreciated. I think this would be important for any, not even football player, but any kind of athlete going into college. Making sure that you're able to, you know, do workouts that can acclimate to whatever sport you're playing. So I
For
appreciate your
sure.
knowledge, man. I appreciate it.
No problem.
All right, signing off.